A medical diagnosis typically centers on a single individual, an isolated tragedy contained within one brain. We assign the family member an external role. They are the supporter, managing logistics from a safe distance, seemingly insulated from the neurological decay. For a daughter stepping into the role of primary caregiver, for a mother with dementia, that perceived distance vanishes almost immediately. The disease inextricably binds two people together. While one name appears on the chart, the diagnosis belongs to both the patient and the caregiver. Those first few years dismantle the hope of a simple lifestyle adjustment. The caregiver enters the role expecting to manage a schedule, but quickly finds themselves trying to manage a total collapse of their previous reality. Understanding the impact of dementia requires looking past the failing mind of the patient to see the profound, involuntary transformation happening to the person left holding the pieces. The caregiver's environment is defined by the heavy atmosphere of a midnight kitchen table, cluttered with medical bottles, overdue paperwork, and a cold coffee. The mental burden rapidly expands beyond the logistics of pills and doctor visits. It settles into a constant, unmanageable weight of uncertainty about what the disease will take next. Under the pressure of that uncertainty, the caregiver's internal mental structure begins to rewire itself. This isn't a choice, but a mutation triggered by the constant demands of responsibility. This shows two minds moving in opposite directions. On the left, the patient's network is breaking apart. On the right, the caregiver's mind is vibrating with overactivity, overloaded by the rapid-fire connections of hypervigilance. There is a specific moment when you realize you aren't just assisting a relative through a decline. You are fighting to survive the metamorphosis of your own existence. The early years of caregiving begin the process of forging an entirely new psychological identity, shaped by the pressure of a life that no longer resembles your own. Most models of grief assume a predictable timeline, arriving in a single massive peak following the illness's end. Dementia caregivers experience duelos in vida, living grief. Sorrow arrives in dozens of sharp, compounding spikes, erupting along the timeline from the very first day. This endurance test is marked by a series of agonizing microlosses, long before the physical end is in sight. You mourn a forgotten recipe, a confused glance, or the sudden erasure of a cherished shared memory that used to define your relationship. This creates a constant paradox. You are required to grieve the loss of your mother while she is sitting right in front of you. The disease forces the caregiver to simultaneously protect their loved one's physical life while mourning their continuous psychological disappearance. Once the new reality of caregiving takes hold, the psychological landscape is permanently altered. The reflection in the mirror reveals a version of yourself you no longer recognize. Caregiving is an act of accompanying another person through their battle, but that is only half of the experience. The journey is a dual battle, fought simultaneously on two entirely different fronts. On the external front, you stand beside your mother as she fights against the decline of her own mind. On the hidden internal front, you wage a silent war against the erosion of your identity and the permanent loss of who you were. Final empathy for dementia requires recognizing the invisible patient, the caregiver who sacrifices their own former self to shoulder the weight of a vanishing mind.